Ms Legalista here. Welcome to the live. This is actually part two of a series that I'm doing based on this New York Times article that came out that's talking about the disturbing truth, uh, I guess, about black hair products, relaxers. I need to bring that back up. But I got a little distracted here because I remembered I had made myself a drink and left it in the other room. Not a drink, but just something to put down my throat because I've been talking and there's a lot going on. So this is actually a pretty long article, but I don't just have that. I'm not just going to be talking about the truth. The disturbing truth was actually the name of the article. Let me bring that up so you can see it. Let me scroll back up to the beginning so that you can actually see that part too. I'm actually going to bring up some archival kinds of pictures from way back in the day. So I've been talking about these hair care products, and a lot of times we're talking about it from the perspective of today, like L'Oreal and Soft Sheen and I don't know, Carson products, Dark and Lovely, olive oil, all of those sorts of things. But I do want to show you some of these really old ads from back in the day. And one of them, there was one ad I could not put up here because I think that, I don't know, I'm concerned that YouTube totally would not have given me a strike or something or said I violated community guidelines. I think they would have shut me down completely and said, no, girl, you cannot show that. But you have to remember that this was an advertisement that way back when was just par for the course in terms of how Black people were portrayed in advertisements. But when I saw it, it still caught me off guard. It still completely caught me off guard. You have certain words right there. Like it wasn't black hair, it was the N-word hair. And it had to do with the guy. It was like I didn't even really understand the connection of why those two words were being used in that picture. And it was sort of one of those cartoon pictures from way back. And so it like I didn't understand. I did not understand it at all. But here's the article that was released today, The Disturbing Truth About Hair Relaxers. And I've done a number of videos on this already. I did the first part of the live a little bit earlier today, going through some of the things that the article is talking about, the background behind the use of this and how we got to this point, and the chemical piece of it, what's in these products, how we got to this point where you've got thousands of people that have now filed these lawsuits against several companies for these products based on this sister study that came out in 2022 that talked about Black women having twice, I think it was 2.5 times more likelihood, higher chance of getting uterine cancer. So that is where this article starts. But where I want to scroll down to is I want to scroll down to this piece now about Chris Rock and Oprah. And here's the person who, so first of all, let me give due credit where credit is due. Okay, yes, that was redundant. This article is by Linda Villarosa, a contributing writer for the magazine, interviewed dozens of people, including scientists, government officials, and legal plaintiffs. And then I want to scroll down to this person right here who has done a lot of background research. Her name is Dr. Tamara James Todd. She is a Harvard professor who has been studying this for like 20 years. You know, sometimes, I've said this before, sometimes you have to be in the culture to understand that there needs to be some conversation about what's going on in the culture. Like, I'm not a child anymore, so yeah, I can talk about child things that I experienced or maybe that I see my daughter experience, but she's the one who was the child most recently, right? So she would be a better person to talk about what young people are going through now than I would be. But I want to scroll down to this point where we started to talk about Chris Rock. Here's one of the ads that I went over earlier. I want to go to this piece where it talks about Chris Rock, and it says, in his 2009 documentary, Good Hair, Chris Rock memorably, and let me make sure I'm not, okay, great. Chris Rock memorably showed an aluminum soda can, remember now, an aluminum soda can submerged in a beaker of sodium hydroxide, or lye, which was until fairly recently a main ingredient in relaxers. After 4 hours, it had disintegrated. Now, if that does not leave an impression on you, and I should do a whole nother video that shows a piece of that so that we can talk about it. If that does not concern you about what you were putting in your hair, you didn't know that before. Like, we didn't know that. We didn't know that. We didn't know that until this came out. We didn't know it could do that. And then as we started to become a little bit more informed and grew older and had access to more information, like you have Google now, had access to that information, we've become a little bit more knowledgeable. And so we're a little bit pickier about the products that we put on our bodies and in our bodies. So it says here in the 2022 Hulu series, The Hair Tales, Oprah Winfrey recalled leaving a salon with a severely burned scalp after a relaxer treatment in 1977. Every time she combed or washed her hair, clumps of it fell out. Now, some of you may have experienced that at some point in time if you had one of those really strong relaxers. And I have known people who have said that the relaxer was so strong that it either thinned their hair out completely. I know after I had one, yeah, the texture is gone, right? The texture is gone. And so people who have either had their hair thinned out completely or just severe burns. And then when the scab comes off, whatever hair was in that section where the scab is, all of that hair came out with it. And so women have experienced a lot in terms of being exposed to lye and the damage that it was causing then to their hair that they knew about, but not even knowing that there was this 2.5 times more likelihood that you would get uterine cancer. So you didn't even know about that. It's sort of like, okay, I'm hearing about women having experiences with their hair, but who knew that deep inside your body there were these other issues that were going on that nobody knew about, but now we're doing a whole lot more talking about it. So let me go back to this article. So that was Oprah and Chris Rock giving us our share of their thoughts and concerns on this. So I want to scroll down to this piece because really and truly, this is what I keep saying. If it were not for money on the side of the manufacturers, the cosmetic companies, then they would just say, hey, y'all, we're going to take this off the shelf. We're going to bring this back in because we need to retool some things. Don't use it anymore, y'all. Okay, let us get this right. But that's not the way it works, right? The only time you see something like that happen is with a recall. And usually, it's related to something really, really dangerous, like the brakes failing in your vehicle or your airbag actually not just inflating, but exploding and causing burns all over your body. So usually it has to be something really significant that is happening then that people can see, not this sort of cause and effect that's years later and gives the manufacturer an opportunity to say, wait, there might be a correlation here, but there's not necessarily causation. And that's typically one of those challenges, one of those hiccups, those things, obstacles that you have to get past when you say you need to take something off the market because it's causing this kind of damage. It's one of those things that's just hard to prove until you have the scientific data to back that up. So I want to go to this next piece where we talk about the money because, like I said, otherwise, if it weren't for the money, I think manufacturers would be a little bit more, wouldn't be so hesitant about doing something. Number one, they're concerned about the money. And number two, they're concerned about losing market share because if you take something off the market, then your people are going to go elsewhere. They're not going to stick around all the time until you get it right, until you come back and you make it work. So let's see what this story actually says about the money. It says, because of stories like these and what Oprah said about clumps of hair falling out and Chris Rock, that showing us the disintegrating soda can with the lye. It says, because of stories like these and as Black women have increasingly embraced natural styles, sales of hair relaxers have declined from 71 million. This is just the hair relaxers, okay? From 71 million in 2011 to 30 million in 2021. So you're talking about over a 10-year span, that that money that was going into hair relaxers was cut by more than half. And so you have companies, trying to hold on to whatever they can, whatever they get that is left. It's like, I want to make sure I got my share. On top of that, you might now be facing lawsuits where you got to pay money out. Okay. But that is still a sizable market. It says a 2020 analysis found that 10.5 million Americans used home hair permanents and relaxers, and clients are still having their hair relaxed at salons. An estimated 89% of Black women in the United States have used hair relaxers at least once. It says, in other words, an overwhelming majority of Black women have straightened their hair using chemicals at some point in their lives, often beginning in childhood. And that's usually when it starts. When it's fairly young. And yeah, I was going to share personal experience, but maybe I won't. All right. So Clyde broke again, caused Mona reverse payment. Let's see. It's a miracle of God we survived. I'm glad changes are being made. Thank you for addressing this issue. Yeah, it is. It's concerning that it has gone on for so long. Look, it's one thing for us to have the information and to be informed. Okay. So at that point, it's informed consent. I have the information. I can make a determination about whether or not I want to use this or not. I know what the problems are. I know what the side effects might be. But in the earlier portion of this article, they actually said with some of the toxins, some of the ingredients, they don't even put them on the package. So even if you looked at the package to become informed, it's not there. So yeah, so a lot of people are still using it. Let's go back to the article and see where we are here. It says, in other words, an overwhelming majority of Black women have straightened their hair using chemicals at some point in their lives, often beginning in childhood. She talks about the number of people that she talked to, but then here's the question that she points out. And this is the question that I put in the title of this video. The question remains, why are hair products marketed aggressively to Black women still on the market with so little oversight, even amid growing documentation of the extent of the harm? When I asked an FDA spokeswoman why the endocrine disrupting chemicals called phthalates are not banned for use in cosmetics, including hair relaxers in the United States, as they are banned in Europe, she replied in an email that, quote, at the present time, the FDA does not have evidence that phthalates as used in cosmetics pose a safety risk. All right, so James Todd, the Harvard professor that I showed you earlier, she says, I'm not saying that more research isn't needed, but there's study after study. At some point, you have evidence enough to start making recommendations that people reduce their use of these products or don't use them at all. She says, I hate to say it, she added, but in the US, we don't care. It's about the money. And that's what I've said. It truly is about the money here. This is what we're talking about. Let me share with you some of these pictures that I came across as I was doing a little bit of research on this. Some of the older ones that we can look at. Let me see if I can be up here too so I can look at them. All right, so this is one, and it says from the 1920s. So this is Emma A. Steele, and it looks like it's part of an advertisement, and she has hairdressing there, facial massage, combings, something else made up, special attention given. And so it looks like her shop was in Cleveland. Then we have Madam C.J. Walker, and I'm going to come to that in the article in just a minute. But I wanted to show you one of the, ads here about Madam C.J. Walker's preparations. And it says, if you want beauty of complexion and loveliness of hair, try Madam C.J. Walker's world-renowned toilet preparations. Okay. And then you see the name of the company at the bottom, and CJ Walker Manufacturing Company. I think she's credited with being the first Black woman millionaire in the country. But yes, one of the ads there for that. And it's hard to see. Let me go back. It's hard to see the products there. And I'll show you something else in another picture. And then just sort of looking at, natural hair way back in the day when these photographs were taken. And you can see the texture there in her hair. But we moved away from that. As we were told, it was easier to take care of your hair if it was relaxed. But come on, let's not forget, there is some underlying cultural assimilation there, right? Another hairstyle shown in that picture. So this is one of a picture. This was from the Smithsonian. These are all of these pictures came from the Wikipedia, what do you call it? I can't remember what you call it, but anyway. Free sample, Madam CJ Walker's Tan Off, okay, that you're putting on your skin, right? Recommended for brightening sallow or dark skin, for the treatment of tan, freckled, skin blotch, and for clearing the complexion. So you have all of these cosmetics that are marketed to you. And then here's one for Wonderful Hair Grower. And again, it's another product from Madam CJ Walker. And then we have, and this was, I guess, part of the ad or something that went with it. It says, 1 million eyes turned upon it daily. Agents everywhere. And so part of it was she would have her agents out selling these products to women. This is sold everywhere in the USA. And then you have a picture here. And I thought this one was interesting. In the background, because you can see in the background some wigs, and yet in the front you see someone getting their hair set with rollers. And then of course the foam rollers. Who doesn't remember the foam rollers? Anybody younger than me, I guess. But yeah, there you have the foam rollers that we recall, and maybe some people still use. And I'll wrap it up with these guys. Maybe you know who these guys are. When the afros were really hot, okay? But yeah, you know who those people are. So let me go back to this article, and because I do want to hit on the next part too. So it says, so this is a piece about trying to maintain culture and pride, and then still trying to fit in. It says Black people, and particularly Black women, have had a centuries-old complicated relationship with our hair. It has been a source of style, creativity, and pride, as well as pain, insult, and discrimination. And think about that for a second, because what you're saying is, here it is, 2024, and not that this happened this year, but here it is, 2024, and we still have instances where places are having to put policies in place that say, we will not discriminate on the basis of hairstyle, like that, and most of the time we know we're really only talking about Black people, right? That everything else is acceptable to some extent, but people are concerned when they see locks and braids and afros. Is it a professional look? And some people think that it's not a professional look, and that therefore your hair needs to be straightened. Now, I will say I know of a person who, during their high school career, was on a cheerleading team, and this person had curly hair, and the team coaches told this person that she would need to straighten her hair so that she could fit in and look like the rest of the team, right? Imagine that. Imagine being told you have to straighten your hair. And granted, this was a few years ago, okay, at least 6 years ago or so. But yeah, I'm going to let you think about that one for a second on your own, being told that that's what you have to do so you can fit in and look like part of the team so that everybody can look the same way. Now, I've seen some of these competitions before where, because my daughter participated, where they all pull their hair back and they all wore like a bun, or they all pulled their hair back and they all wore like a curly attachment, and they all wore the same sparkly stuff on their face, because those were competitions. So some of this is really interesting. So let me go back to this article because I do want to touch on the next piece here in it, and I want to finish that section too. So in the early 1900s, as hundreds of thousands of Black people migrated from the South to cities in the North to find employment, Black women made damaging efforts to straighten their hair in order to be perceived as presentable and professional rather than unsophisticated and country. Okay. We don't want to be seen as country. We want to be seen as up and coming people coming up north. You know, we've been freed. We want to get good jobs and work. And so in order to do that, you have to look professional. You have to look like you can do the work and that you know how to carry yourself. And so one way you do that is by making sure you look a certain way, that you fit in, that you assimilate into the society in which you're trying to live. Madam C.J. Walker became one of the first Black American millionaires by developing the Walker system. She started this college. So then I want to get into this last part over who owns what. And then I'm going to wrap this up, this second one. I'm going to have to go back and name these videos like part 1, part 2, part 3, which I haven't done yet. Okay, so the author says her grandmother migrated from Mississippi to Chicago, that south from north move, right? In the late 1920s, and refused to work as a domestic like her sisters. She couldn't afford Walker School, so she went to this knockoff school. But she says, I still remember neighborhood women decades later sitting in our kitchen to get their hair shampooed, pressed, and curled. The sight of the stovetop flames. You guys, I remember when my grandmother would press my hair. And yes, and even my mom too. My grandmother put that hot comb on the stove. All right. Let's talk about African-American inventor Garrett Morgan, because here's the timeline that I want you to think about. Because remember, a lot of times when you're in that culture, you see the gap, you see things that need to be done. And so you start to fulfill that need. You develop a company, it's going to provide that product or that service. And then when other people who are not in that culture see what's going on and that there's money to be made and that, hey, this looks like a good opportunity, they then find a way to, move in also. This is the way capitalism works. We know it. Okay. Right. The first party gets there and then other people come in and get interested too. There's nothing new about what I'm talking about. So the African-American inventor, Garrett A. Morgan, has been credited with developing the first cream relaxer. Okay. But it says it didn't come into widespread use until Georgie Johnson, a Chicago chemist, invented a more effective formula using sodium hydroxide as the main ingredient. So it broke down the curls. All right, so Johnson and his wife brought Ultra Sheen, a relaxer targeted to Black women, to the market in 1957, and it became a sensation. What did I say? So you have a product. We've already talked about what this article said. You have a need. People moving from the South to the North, they want to look more professional. They want to look more pulled together. They want to look like they can assimilate to the Northern society and get good jobs and move up. Talking about this upward mobility, literally from the South and figuratively, right? And so a way to do that is to, give your hair a certain look. And so once this was out there in 1957, you've got, another generation of people moving north. And it's like, yes, it's going to be a sensation. They found something the culture was looking for. And then you don't have to sit there with a hot comb, wait for it to get hot, burn ear. How many of you had to hold your ears back? Fold your ears back so you didn't get burned, right? Holding your ears back so you didn't get burned. And so now there's this chemical relaxer, and it's a sensation. It is a sensation because it is filling a need that people are looking for. So how does this then evolve even further, right? So Johnson Products became the first Black-owned company to be listed on the American Stock Exchange, controlling 60% of the Black hair care market by 1975. One company, Johnson Products. Let me say that again. One Black-owned company, Johnson Products. First to be listed on the American Stock Exchange, controlling 60% of the hair care market. This is like Nike for hair when Nike moved up, right? This is like Nike for hair. Okay. It says its success attracted a flood of competitors. Like I said, you're first in, everybody's going to be like, wait, we want a piece of that. And that's exactly what happens. And they come in, but you have to do something better. You have to have better customer service. You have to either find people who aren't yet a part of that group and really liking it, or you have to find a way to take people away, right? And if you can't take people away, what do you do then? You just buy them, right? So it says its success attracted a flood of competitors, most of them other Black owned companies headquartered in Chicago. Johnson's biggest rivals were Carson Products. We're talking Dark and Lovely, Soft Sheen, Carefree Curl. Okay, it says, but even as these Black companies were capitalizing on a societal standard, a counterculture was emerging. So you have the Black Power movement. Okay, then you have the Afro, right? Everybody's sort of going back to nature, reaching back inside and saying, I'm going to have Black pride. I'm going to take care of myself. It's going to be about me showing up in my natural self, which means no hair relaxer. And this is even so, the mainstream pressure to wear straight hair remained pervasive. And the author says that my grandmother stopped speaking to my mother, my sister, and me for several weeks in the mid 70s when we went natural with Angela Davis style afros. Okay. Even as it was becoming increasingly political, many Black consumers continued using relaxers. And this is when they started complaining about this thinning and the breakage because of the lye in the relaxers. So in 1975, the Federal Trade Commission, which oversees consumer products, if you got a complaint, hey, go to them. I'm talking so fast. Demanded that Johnson put warning labels on lye-based products. Now, this time, I'm not using them yet because I'm still like teeny tiny, right? By the mid 1980s, woohoo! I'm getting almost to that point. Almost. Many manufacturers had removed sodium hydroxide from its relaxer ingredient list. Most replaced it with a milder chemical, and these products were now being labeled No-Lye. So, how many of you switched over to the No-Lye at that point? So, I started using my first relaxer. I got my first relaxer in 85, and it was Dudley's. So I'm in North Carolina. We're very much Dudley's here out of, I think, Greensboro. So it's sort of like the hometown relaxer team. I'm not even in Greensboro. Okay. I'm down the street, and I was even further down the street then, but that was what I was using. And I will tell you, the strength of what was put on my hair was way more than what it needed to be. You're talking about feeling your hair and feeling like it has been totally stripped of its strength. I mean, sure, my hair was soft, my hair was silky. You touched it and it was like light as air. But you have to think about that's because the essence of it has been totally reformatted. Okay, your hair is not what it used to be. It is entirely something different. And so even amidst the 70s and after all that, you still had young girls coming up, through grade school and high school having natural hair. And then at some point in time, shifting to get perms. And that was exactly what happened to me. I was one of these people who then shifted to perms as I got older. And that's what I did for decades. So it says here, most replaced it with milder. And they started using descriptors. Here's the thing. They started using descriptors like gentle and natural and healthy and nourishing and conditioning. Like, what is nourishing about stripping your hair and using some product that takes something from its natural state and makes it into something else? How is that natural and healthy? Like, that doesn't even make any sense when you think back to it. It doesn't really make any sense. This is in 1979. Now, here's the best part of this article right here. Like, this almost sums it up. And I'm going to wrap up. I got this part and one more piece after. But this sums it up. This is in 1979. Revlon, the first non-Black company to set its sight on the lucrative Black hair care market, introduced a relaxer cream it called Realistic, positioning itself as superior to the Black-owned companies. It branded its product, quote, the first hair relaxer good enough to be called Revlon. And so at that point, it's like, yes, Yes, and I'm going to be really strong with my assessment of what I'm going to say. So if you're the type of person who gets offended by these kinds of statements, then now is time for you to leave. Here is what here is what this is about. Okay, let me read this again in case you did not get it the first time. In 1979, Revlon, the first non-black company to set its sights on the lucrative black hair care market, introduced a relaxer cream it called Realistic. Okay, so we're talking 1979. It's a non-black company. We're talking lucrative market. I already talked about how lucrative this market is, right? And they come out with their own relaxer cream. And what they say is the first hair relaxer good enough to be called Revlon. As if what they're saying is that other stuff's not nearly as good as us because we're Revlon. We're not black, we're better. And so we have a better product. You need to come over to us. So remember I said, once you're first to market and you're able to grab a 60% market share, this other whoever is coming in next has to find a way to overcome that, has to be able to say, this is why you need to switch, this is why we're better, this is why we're better. And in a lot of ways in the US culture, there has been this sort of underlying theme of white is better, straight white hair is better. And now if you have a white company that is making the product for black people, then that is somehow better too. So that's a little bit of what is going on. If you want to get the market share, then you got to find a way to stand out. And this is what Revlon was doing. In 1998, Carson Products bought Johnson Products for 70 million. In 2000, the French cosmetic company, look, everybody wants a piece of that now, right? Everybody wants a piece now. The French cosmetics company L'Oreal acquired Carson. Like I said, if you cannot beat them, join them by just buying them. Let's just go buy them. Let me call up my attorneys. Let me get my bankers together, my investors. We are going to buy Carson Products. Then we don't have to do anything. We can now get some of this lucrative black money that's out there. The French cosmetic company L'Oreal acquired Carson. L'Oreal also snapped up Shopsheen, paying a combined price estimated at $370 million for the two companies, and absorbing. Look, immediately they now get 20% of the black hair care market. Because if your companies have been making money for decades, so you can just come in and just buy up what you want, right? Again, not a put down, just saying this is what's going on here. Okay. It then says the industry was booming and selling chemical relaxed hair to a new generation with kits, box kits. I'm telling you, box kits. So now you don't have to compete with the people in the salon who are actually doing the hair and putting on the product. You can now do DTC, which is direct to consumer. Direct to consumer, get them hooked on your product, have them like it, love it, and you got them, right? You got them, because usually people don't switch. Once they find something they like, then they stick with it. And so it's like now the industry is booming and selling chemically relaxed hair to the new generation with kits that were themselves objects of desire, decorated in pastels, flowers, butterflies, and photos of smiling little girl models with their hair hanging in glossy dark sheets. So there you go. In the next video, I'll talk a little bit more about how she talks about being a young girl in this whole thing. Again, part of this is just about educating ourselves about what is going on with this lawsuit. If you know people who use relaxers and are suffering or have suffered from uterine cancer, then you definitely want to do your research, find out more, figure out if you want to, figure out if they want to participate in this lawsuit. But understand how we got to this point and understand what is going on with the lawsuit now, especially what is going on with L'Oreal refusing to turn over documents that they have been told to turn over time and time again. So there we go. So again, that's part 2. I'll jump into part 3 when I get a chance, and I'll go back and update the thumbnails of the videos so that you can follow along. But definitely go ahead. Please give the video a thumbs up if this provided you with information and helped you understand what was more of what was going on in this lawsuit. And don't forget to subscribe. Peace.